If you broke up with an avoidant partner, there's always this question of, should I go no contact? Should I give them a silence treatment? Because if I do, there's a side of you thinking, but they move on, right? They'll forget about me. That's going to push them even further away. And there's another part, perhaps more rational, looking at videos online. Yeah, you should go no contact and maintain no contact at all costs. I want to step away from this sort of black and white thing. Here we're going to discuss the psychology of avoidance, because I'm a therapist and I'm an avoidant, so I'll be able to explain you a little bit more about our psychology. But also, we're going to discuss a study that actually looks at how avoidant responds to silence when they're under stress or when their partner wants to discuss about emotional conversations, about conflicts, about things that are difficult to them. And also, and more importantly, is giving you the tools and the right strategies if you want to rekindle the relationship, if you want to give the relationship a second chance, or if you want to assess whether you're wasting your time or not. Because even though sometimes I talk a lot about how to get your ex back, the main objective of my channel is to help you find the right partner and nurture the right relationship. And sometimes this breakup is just a wake-up call for you to realize that's not the right person for me. And we'll discuss about that in a second. So the first thing that happens when you give an avoidant that silence treatment, and this is true with regardless of the attachment style, is this relief. Because you have to understand that breaking up with someone, there's a lot of time processing the information, and that builds up over time. And when the breakup happens, there's an element of, okay, it's finally there. Maybe they're not fully happy and satisfied by this. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes people break up and they're really sad and depressed about their decision, but they still feel the pressure is over. And for avoidant, it's really about the emotional pressure. That was too much for me. It didn't work for me. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. All these kind of things where they feel the relationship was providing too much pressure. And this breakup is relieving that pressure, right? And so mechanically, a breakup gives you also your independence. This is what avoidant love is, to be independent, self-reliant. So if I'm breaking up with you, I reclaim this, right? And so right away, right after you give them, or you start the contact, or you give them that space, they will feel relieved. That doesn't mean that they will feel, I'm relieved, therefore this is what I need, and therefore I'm happy, and that would be the same like this forever. Obviously, this is a temporary phase. It's a little bit like you apply pressure on something, you release that pressure, okay? But at some stage, you'll get back to that natural state, and I'll discuss that later on. Now, there's something you need to understand, and I really want to spend 2 minutes on that. Sometimes it's not a question of attachment. So sometimes maybe your partner or your ex is an avoidant person. Maybe they are not avoidant, they're just not into you. And it's very hard, it's very tricky, especially when you have feelings for that person, when you have a history with that person, to really assess properly whether actually you're not in denial. Maybe your friends are telling you, hold on, he was never or she was never into you. So the point is to assess their feelings, to assess the potential of the relationship. And it's something that I designed for free for you. I've tested this out last week, and I had amazing feedback. So have a look. It's an assessment that gives you basically for relationship profiles. And depending on that profiles, you'll be able to understand what you need to do right now. Because it really depends on their potential, their willingness to change, the history of the relationship. And so this is something I assess in this tool. It's totally free. And the reason I designed this tool is to really help my clients who have had relationship with avoidant and trying to figure out whether, because it's not always about getting back together. Sometimes it's like, what do I need right now? So have a look. And if your relationship has high potential, so if you take the test and your relationship has high potential, then the rest of the video will be relevant to you. If not, or otherwise, unfortunately, it's not a question of no contact. It's not a question of boundaries. this means that probably the next course of action for you is to find ways to move on. And that's another thing. And if you have any question about that, let me know in the comment section if it's not clear. What happens after a breakup for avoidant who had feelings for their partners is this idea of emotional suppression. The relationship was too much for them, but the attachment-driven response, so avoidant, they are self-reliant, they value independence. So breakup gives them that reassurance. At the same time, because they still have feelings, being avoidant doesn't mean that you can't have feelings. Being avoidant means that you push away anything around intimacy, emotional disclosure, all these things that we feel like, oh, I don't want to touch like this. I don't want to be vulnerable, right? And so the thing is, when they start feeling vulnerable, when they start feeling like, oh, hold on, I feel a bit of grief, I feel emotional, I feel a bit sad when I wake up in the morning, they will decide to suppress, to push away those thoughts. And so what they would do, something that you can assess, they will probably distract themselves with work or hobbies. And so you'll find them like working heavily on a new project out of nowhere, for example. They will appear emotionally detached. And sometimes we use the image of ducks. So, you know, ducks, they look very still and composed from the, when you look at them above the water. But then underneath, you have their feet like going like it. So this is sometimes how avoidance operates. Let me know in the comment section if you like this image. And you tell you things, or they tell people, I'm fine, I don't need anyone, I'm okay. I.e., you know, I'm unaffected. You know you had something special. Everyone knows that you had an amazing relationship. Maybe you've been together for 1 year, but that was something substantial. Maybe you were together for 10 years. And still, because I see that every single day, 10 years, 15 years together, and they feel like as if nothing happened, right? And it is heartbreaking because you feel like, were they lying to me all that time? Who am I for this person? I thought I knew that person, and now they can disconnect. They are playing, they're acting. Not that it's like their sort of emotional response is like suppressing those things. They still feel them. They still feel potentially sad, depressed about this, but they decide to sweep everything underneath the carpet. So what will happen is also, sorry, my cat is leaving and there's the cat flap making some noise. So conscious anxiety is that, just a reminder, the same way avoidant can love, avoidant can be anxious. The thing is, the way they process anxiety is that they dismiss those negative feelings. So rather than being submerged and sort of driven by those feelings, sometimes people who have an anxious attachment side, that will be like, those negative feelings will be the driver of their decisions and actions. And for avoidance, they would like, let me distract myself from this. That's why they would work very hard, hobbies, or could be addiction sometimes. You know, I can't cope with this. I don't want to cope with this. I don't want to even consider this. So I'm going to find anything outside here to distract me from this. What it tells us is that it's these things that are unresolved, insecurities that resurface because of this breakup, because of this relationship. And so what will happen is when those things resurface, they'll start asking themselves about their partner, about life, about what they want to achieve. The what we call the inner conflict about their feelings is, I know I love her or I love him, but somehow it's too scary. Somehow I can't make it work. Okay, so those conflicts, again, this is only true if you're sure about their feelings. If you're not sure, and it's fine not to be sure, that's the whole point of a breakup. Sometimes it's feeling lost, and being lost, being confused, is actually sometimes the right, the right environment for you to find yourself. So it's normal to be confused. It's normal not to have all the answers, and you're watching this video because you want to have answers, and it's totally fine. And look at the people commenting on this video, look at the people watching my videos and other videos of other therapists online. you're not the only one. Okay, it's normal to seek answers, and I'm here to try to provide some answers. What happens as well is the longing for connection. So there's this breakup and there's always this longing. Again, talking about relationships that mattered for them. And so there's always this desire for intimacy. They are blocking this need for connection. So we have a deep need to be attached to a primary attachment figure. Avoidant, they decide to dismiss this. They say like, oh yeah, I don't need this. In reality, we all need this, right? And that's the problem for avoidant attachment people. So for me, for a very long time, you feel like, I like the idea of a relationship, but I don't need this, right? It's fine. It's a nice to have. And then you start falling in love, and then you start figuring out, hold on, what do I want? Do I want to have kids? Do I want to have family? Do I want to settle down? Do I want to have meaningful relationships? Then maybe I need to let go of some of those beliefs around, I don't need this. It's just a nice to have. Obviously, you need to find the right balance, because if you're leaning towards it's a must have and it's the only thing that will provide me happiness, then you're going to have a hard time having a healthy relationship. So one will be leaning around overly independent, so avoidance. I don't need anyone, I don't need you. The other one will be leaning around codependency. I can't do anything without you. So the whole point is to find this, what we call interdependence in the context of a relationship. Also, you have to understand that this longing comes from that emotional connection that they built with you. You're probably one of the only person they managed to open up with. They probably told you things, I've never said those things to anyone else. I've never felt like this to anyone else. I've never felt that vulnerable, etc., etc. So this is a strong sign that they trust you, that they went outside of their comfort zone to connect with you at a deeper level. And of course, they're going to miss that because nobody can give that to them. And this connection, this deep emotional connection, is very hard to replace and is essential, right? And so you will basically feel avoidant or see avoidance really grieve this, because it's going to be very hard to let go of this element. And when you realize that, you realize I need to work on myself. As an avoidant, I can't do like this. I can't be like this anymore. I can't be like a 20 years old who doesn't want to commit, who go day by day with the flow. I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm 60. I want something else. This is something you have to assess. It's something, I don't want to talk to my assessment about my assessment all the video, but it's something that we assess in the assessment. But now I'd like to spend 5 minutes analyzing this study, and I like how they name studies. To make it more complex than it is. Support seeking and support giving with couples in an anxiety-provoking situation, the role of attachment style. So basically, the way it works, they assessed couples and they gave them situations or conversation prompts to have this kind of difficult conversation. And they were analyzing the reaction of avoidant partner and anxious partner. And from this study, I wanted to analyze the silence part, because in this study, and I will put the link in the description, he or she, he looked, or they, because it's usually more than one person, they analyzed, those conversations where they had like silence treatment. So they were asked, so the protocol is, as I said, couples ask to discuss personal issue. And so they analyze specifically avoidant partners, how they react to moment of silence, and they measure the stress. So could be verbal cues, could be non-verbal cues, body language, that's the word I was looking for, all these kind of things to assess whether the person was stressed or not. So the finding of the study, and you'll see like, interesting. The silence seems to be extremely powerful with avoidant. Extremely powerful. And what happens and what they notice is that actually silence can trigger stress, a lot of stress with avoidance. So you might be thinking, hold on, he told us avoidant, they love silence. They love to be on their own, they love that space, etc. And this study is telling us that silence is providing additional stress. Yeah, that's the study. That's basically what it says. They perceive silence as uncomfortable or threatening. And they sometimes interpret silence as a reason to withdraw further than to engage. So I spent 10 minutes explaining like, yeah, silence, perfect. It's creating the right environment. It's forcing them to reflect. And now I'm telling you, yeah, there's this study actually telling you that silence will stress them out, will push them even further away. Now, the study covers couples. So people who are together, and they analyze situations, so conversations, difficult conversations. And the reason, and I think I don't have the answer. And I'd like potentially to debate on this because more than one brain is sometimes needed to reflect on those things. Because the thing is, when you look at studies, quick caveat, there's always limitation to studies. So it could be the sample, could be the location, the method. And in this case, also, it's not necessarily about breakups. Now, what it tells us, however, is that silence is extremely powerful and it can affect avoidant partner. The problem is, in the context of a relationship, silence, or the Gottman, one of the 4 horsemen of the Gottman is stonewalling, and it's the most dangerous one, is dangerous in the context of a relationship because you are preventing emotional connection, you're preventing repairing. But in the context of a breakup, I have the belief, and not only the belief because I see that with my clients, obviously, that can create the right electroshock with your partner. And so creating that sense of stress, giving them a bit of stress can be positive. Because if you were giving them the silence treatment, and by doing that, you don't provide any element of stress for your ex, where is the incentive to change? Right? Stress is also, or anxiety, can also be a driver, a catalyst for change. It's just finding the right dose and the right balance. So if you have an anxious attachment style, probably in the past, after the breakup, maybe you didn't know about attachment, maybe you discovered my content recently, you probably protested. So it's called protest behaviors in attachment theory. Maybe you were clingy, maybe you pleaded, maybe you begged, because you just wanted them back, right? You wanted to get reassured, you had these abandonment wounds and you couldn't help it. Now, if this breakup is about a clash of attachment, which is basically 99% of my client base, your best option, your only option is to reverse the dynamic. If you trigger this avoidant anxious cycle, I cling, I push back. The more you push back, the more I cling, etc., etc., etc. Then of course, the avoidant partner will leave. Giving them the silence treatment will break this cycle, will kill the cycle. And so what it will create is, rather than adding another layer of complexity, the silence will remove the pressure of the relationship from the avoidance. I discussed right at the beginning, avoidant people, they tend to break up because they feel the relationship is too much. I can't. It doesn't work for me. It's too much for me. Giving them the silence treatment removes the pressure of the relationship, but actually puts pressure on them because they have no other option than to reflect on what they've lost. And again, this is true for relationships that mattered. If they have no news about you, they will start asking themselves like, okay, was I right to be scared about the relationship? What do I really want? what are my needs in terms of relationship needs? What do I want to build? Am I happier now that I broke up with my partner who hasn't done anything wrong? And so all those questions, that silence treatment would provide the right structure, the right platform for them to reflect. If you have any question, if you're not sure, if you're wondering, let me know in the comment section. Have a look in the description for the assessment. If you have any question about the assessment, also let me know in the comment section. And I'll see you next time.